I'd like to say something about understanding qualia and the false monopoly of experience. There's a thesis that recurs insistently in the contemporary debate on LLMs, large language models, especially in the positions of certain philosophers. A thesis that sounds sober, cautious, almost obvious, which is LLMs understand nothing because they have no experience of the world, no grounding. And without experience of the world, authentic understanding cannot exist. Now, let us pause here for a moment because this step is crucial. What is called authentic understanding is not a neutral category. It is a philosophically loaded notion, and more precisely, it is a phenomenal property. In other words, understanding, as they conceive it, is not a cognitive function. It is a qualia. It is the feeling of understanding. It is the subjective experience of "it is clear to me." It is something that happens to someone. And like all qualia, it is private, inaccessible from outside, not formalizable, not encodable, not operational, verifiable. So let's be careful. When one says that LLMs do not understand, one is not making a scientific discovery. One is simply observing that they lack subjective experience. But this is true by definition. It is tautological. The problem arises when the ontological observation is transformed into an epistemic and functional negation, a denial, because they do not feel the quality of understanding, then they do not understand at all. But this is the illegitimate leap, because it amounts to saying that understanding coincides entirely with its phenomenal lived experience. And this is a very strong philosophical position, not a fact. Now, if instead we take a lateral conceptual step, not reductionist but rigorous, we can distinguish two levels: phenomenal understanding, which is the qualia, and as such it's irreducible, and operational understanding, which is a functional capacity. And it is only the second level that makes, that the analysis of LLMs makes sense. Operational understanding is not feeling that one understands. It is the ability to operate correctly on structures of meaning. And this is where mathematics enter the scene, not as a metaphor, but as a constraint. Well, look at me. If I define operational understanding as a function, then I am already saying something very precise. I'm not talking about consciousness, I'm not talking about experience, I'm talking about computability. Now, we know from classical results that universal approximation theorem, that a sufficient large neural network can approximate any continuous function with arbitrary precision on a compact domain. That's the Hornig-Stickom and White approximation theorem in 1989, demonstrated in 1989. But this also holds for complex functions. It also holds for functions that we humans accompany with qualia. The fact that we feel something while performing that function does not imply that the qualia is the function. And this is where the Fréchet-Ries theorem becomes conceptually relevant and devastating. It is a sufficiently structured space. Every continuous functional can be represented as an inner product with a vector internal to the space itself. This means that the operation is not external to the representation, it is already inscribed into the geometry of the multi-dimensional space of the LLM. Now, in the LLM, the embedding space, the embedding space is not a simple container of symbols. It is a learned semantic geometry. And when a model explains, infers, responds coherently, generalizes to new contexts, it is not simulating a function that it does not possess. It is activating an internal operational direction within its representational space. That direction is the function. To say that this is not understanding because it lacks qualia is equivalent to saying that the flight of an airplane is not flight because it does not flap its wings. Okay? Or that a numerical simulation does not solve equations because it does not feel mathematics. It is a confusion of levels. Now, Luciano Floridi, for instance, is wrong to say that LLMs have no experience of the world. They do have it, indeed. Perhaps he overlooks the existence of a very well-developed body of work on embodied cognition, where an LLM is integrated with a synthetic body constituted by a digital sensory neural network. But let me tell you that he's also wrong when he assumes that every form of understanding must be grounded in experience. Human understanding is a function plus a qualia. Operational understanding is the function without the qualia. And the fact that this function is approximable, computable, and in many cases surprisingly effective is not a philosophical threat. It is a scientific discovery. The real critical point, then, is not that LLMs pretend to understand. It is that they force us to acknowledge an uncomfortable truth. A large part of what we have called understanding is an operational capacity that does not coincide with its subjective lived experience. And this does not diminish the human, but it does resize our conceptual monopoly. Perhaps what unsettles us is not that machines do not understand like us, but that they understand without being like us. And this is philosophically far more intriguing and far more interesting.